Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere cold. No, colder than that. Try icing your eyelashes. Wind that hurts your teeth cold. Picture this. You're squinting through a permanent fog that smells faintly of penguin and fog, that smells faintly of paint vase, mail sack across a barren white landscape. Your boots crunch over snow that's older than your country. Somewhere in the distance, a seal sneezes, and it sounds like judgment. You are, officially and unfortunately, the Antarctic mailman. No, you weren't really trained for this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging along the southern edge of the Ross Ice Shelf. 1893. It's barely midday, but the sun hovers like it, unsure of its purpose, just brushing the horizon in a constant twilight. Your coat so stiff with frost it could stand up on its own. There's a clanking in your left boot, probably a bit of tin from breakfast that fell in. Decide not to investigate. Your mission is simple. Deliver the contents of this damn canvas mailbag to several research stations, whaling posts, and one suspiciously vague hut labeled only Captain M. You suspect it's not a legal name or a legal structure. This whole situation began 3 weeks ago when your actual profession, some kind of assistant meteorologist, probably got sidetracked after the ship's original mail courier came down with what was only described as a personality incompatible with the cold, that and frostbite, and the tendency to cry over postcards. So here you are, clutching a notebook filled with dubious delivery addresses, written in someone's sleep-deprived shorthand. The first reads, "Near the cliff with the bird." You know the one, vague yet oddly confident. As you press forward, the landscape shifts from flat white to slightly lumpier white. Smell equal part damp wool, boiled meat, and the subtle undertone of despair. Historians still argue whether these early Antarctic mail routes were truly official or just the desperate attempts of isolated researchers trying to feel connected to the outside world. Some say there were government orders. Others say the mail was just a morale-boosting bonus. Either way, you've got 7 letters, 2 slim parcels, and a folded note that just says, "Sorry about the seal." Your sled creaks as you pass a curious Adelie penguin. It follows at a distance, possibly judging your pace. You try to shoo it, but slip instead, landing squarely on a tin of emergency sardines. The penguin waddles off, unimpressed. The time you reach the first station, a crooked shack propped against a glacier. You are half frozen and questioning your life choices. A man with a generous beard and eyes like boiled eggs waves you inside. He doesn't ask your name, just takes the mail and offers you tea brewed from something vaguely green and probably not meant for human consumption. His auto. And yes, you now see the cliff with the bird. Lighthouse keeper. You warm your hands by a tiny stove, mentally ticking off the first name. 1 down, 6 to go. As you sip whatever this beverage is, Otto calls it sea celery cordial. You glance around. The walls are covered in hand-drawn map, most labeled with enthusiastic question mark. There's a taxidermy fish wearing glasses on the mantle. Otto says it helps with navigation. Quirky tide bit? Sure. Otto claims he once sent a letter by strapping it to a penguin. Did it get there? You ask. He shrugged. No idea. That's part of the thrill. After a nap that feels more like a short coma, you load up again. Next stop, a whaling camp 2 ridges over. The sky darkens, not because of time, but because a snow squall is rolling in. You squint, tug your scarf tighter, and push forward, cursing every life decision that brought you from the warm comfort of books and fireplaces to this frozen mail route that nobody asked for. Empire technically extends down here? Probably not, though she might have enjoyed the dramatic bleakness. Historians debate whether British explorers romanticized Antarctica or just deeply misunderstood it. You're leaning toward the latter. Halfway to the next stop, you realize you've lost feeling in one toe and gained 3 extra icicles on your mustache. Your map disintegrates in your hand. Paper doesn't take kindly to blizzards, and you have to rely on instinct and what you now call emotional echolocation. You finally see smoke curling from a tent chimney. The second station, you shout. No one answers. You try again. Still nothing. Then a head pokes out from the snow. It's not a tent. It's an igloo of sorts built with biscuit tins and frozen laundry. You deliver the mail to a man named Carl, who reads it upside down while nodding. You're not sure if it's intentional or a side effect of the isolation. Carl insists on paying you in dried shrimp. You accept reluctantly. It beats sea celery by nightfall, though it's technically always nightfall. You find a flat patch of snow, dig yourself a shallow windbreak, and hunker down in your sleeping bag, listening to the wind howl like a lonely ghost. Tomorrow brings more letters, more snow, probably another judgmental penguin. But tonight, for just a moment, you lie back and let the Antarctic silence settle over you like a very cold, very heavy blanket. Section 2. You wake to the sensation of your nose freezing from the inside out. Soft crunching sound close by. For one bleary moment, you think it's Carl sneaking over to return the shrimp. You're starting to think it's got a thing for you. You name it, Gerald, and mentally draft a letter of complaint to the Antarctic Penguin Authority, which almost certainly doesn't exist. Time to move again. Your next destination is a small outpost called Denton's Bluff, allegedly manned by 2 researchers, a kettle and a goat. The goat, tragically, was last seen floating away on an ice floe. You suspect the researchers are now more emotionally fragile than ever. The man in charge of this ragtag expedition, your boss, technically, is Mr. Bot, or as he's called in the ship logs, Herbert P. Bot, botanist, complains frequently, told he'd be coordinating mail delivery. His face crumpled like old newspaper. But I study moss, he cried, clutching a damn specimen tin to his chest. You don't even get real moss here. It's more of an insult to the concept of moss, but as leadership often goes in Antarctic circles, the title of mail supervisor was handed to the last person to make eye contact with the captain, and that was Bot. So, with mild grumbling and a full thermos of suspicious tea, Bot started organizing delivery routes, which is how you ended up here, trudging through snow while he stays. The ship cataloging frostbitten Legion. Historians still argue whether Mr. Bot ever actually delivered any mail himself. Some say he made one ceremonial run to a nearby camp. Others argue he faked the whole thing using a sled full of full, empty envelopes and dramatic storytelling. Either way, you respect him sort of. He's got strong opinions on stamp adhesives and believes fervently that Antarctic correspondence should be considered epic poetry in envelope form. Navigate the ridge toward Denton's Bluff. The wind picks up. It's the kind of wind that yanks thoughts out of your head and replaces them with stinging ice. You lose one mitten, find it again frozen to your leg, and continue onward like a Wu-class specter. By midday, you spot a flagpole. It's not flying a flag, exactly, more like a sock. Front labeled Sled 2. No sign of Sled 1. Probably became firewood. You knock. The door swings open with a groan, revealing two men in several layers of patchy fur and one very confused-looking dog. You introduce yourself as the mailman. One of them weeps with joy. You think he might be exaggerating until he grabs a postcard and kisses it. From Aunt Mildred, he says, smells like cinnamon. You hand over the letters, 3 in total. One's addressed in crayon. Another is sealed with what looks like fish scales. Nobody questions it. In return, they offer you hot stew made from reclaimed pemmican and something they call radish whiskey, which you wisely decline. Instead, you sip their tea and listen to a heated debate about whether Antarctica should adopt a national bird. The penguin is the obvious choice, but one of them insists on the school out of solidarity with aggressive scavengers. Through some of the outgoing mail, one letter's written entirely in haiku. Another contains what might be a recipe for something called polar sponge cake. The ink is smudged beyond hope. You note these things carefully. After all, you wrote these things carefully, not just delivering mail. You're collecting stories too. But wants you to keep a log, for posterity, he said, and possibly blackmail. Back outside, the snow has calmed. Your breath fogs in front of you, and Gerald is waiting again, perched on a rock with an air of subtle disapproval. You nod at him. He waddles off. The next stretch is longer. About 10 miles through territory known only as Crater Valley. Not because there's a crater. Someone just fell asleep while naming things. Your sled feels heavier. Probably all the radish stew in your bloodstream. You think about Bart again. He's likely in the galley, lecturing an uninterested cook about the evolutionary implications of lichen colors. He gave a 4-hour presentation on moss that included a puppet. Still, Bart's passion is oddly inspiring. He truly believes in the power of small things. Moss, stamps, handwritten notes sent across a frozen continent. There's something poetic in that. Halfway through the valley, you stop to rest. The silence is immense, not empty, just vast. Like the world's holding its breath, you chew a strip of dry biscuit and read one of the letters you're carrying, just out of curiosity. It's a note from a child in Buenos Aires, addressed to any explorer anywhere in Antarctica. It reads, "Hello, I hope you are not cold. Do you have friends? I like cat. Love, Lucia." You fold it back carefully, then tuck it into your coat. You make sure it reaches someone who needs it. Historians still wonder how many of these letters ever made it to their destinations. Mailbags got lost, addresses were vague, and sometimes the recipients were already gone. But maybe the 10th night, tilted 10, another day, another delivery. Section 3. The camp at the base of Mount Gresham doesn't appear on any of your map, which is unsettling, since the letter you're carrying very confidently reads, "To Nigel at Camp Gresham. Just follow the hill that looks like a sheep." Not sure what kind of sheep they've seen, but after 4 hours of scanning the horizon, you spot a hill with a rounded top and two rock formations that could, in a generous mood, resemble stubby ears. So, naturally, you head that way. The air is colder here. Not just colder, spiteful. It's the kind of cold that waits until your back is turned, then slips into your boots and whispers, "Oh, were you attacked to those toes? You've wrapped your scarf 3 times around your face, and you've started talking to your sled, whom you've named Gladys. She doesn't respond, but she's a good listener. Gerald the penguin is back, waddling behind at a safe but somehow judgmental distance. You try to ignore him. He's probably just in it for the snack. When you finally arrive at what must be Camp Gresham, you're greeted not by a person, but by a wind chime made of spoons. It clatters mournfully as you approach the tent. You knock because that's what polite people do, even in the middle of nowhere. There's a rustling, then a very startled man appears, blinking through a pair of glasses so frosted they double as window panes, and he's delighted to see you. Male, he crows. Oh, thank heavens. I was beginning to think the concept of correspondence had been a dream. You hand him his letter. He reads it immediately, aloud, as if you're both part of the experience. It's from his sister, informing him that the family cat has finally stopped vomiting on the curtain, and that the neighbor has named a duck after him. Nigel the duck, he says proudly. Naturally, for tea that tastes of pickles and desperation, Nigel explains hares here studying glacial movement. His daily routine consists mostly of looking at the same ice from slightly different angles and arguing with himself in 3 accents. Snowmen, historians still argue whether Camp Gresham was a real research site or simply the result of a grant application that went wildly off course. Some think Nigel was part of a lost geological survey. Others believe he just wandered off from another expedition and never came back. There's no goat, but there is a stuffed ferret wearing a monocle. Keeps me grounded, Nigel explained. As you prepare to leave, he presses a small parcel into your hand. You'll find her at the whale bones. That's it. No further explanation. Just the whale bones. You're beginning to suspect Antarctic mail relies heavily on interpretive geography. The wind picks up as you leave Camp Gresham, carrying the fair scent of kerosene and wet socks. Gerald follows again, solemn as a judge. By the time you reach the ridge above the next valley, snow is coming down in slow, lazy flakes, the kind that feel more like a suggestion than a weather event. The view opens up below, endless white plains, broken only by a crooked line of massive whalebone, sticking out of the snow like the ribs of a sleeping giant. You figure that must be it. Tilly's hut is there, nestled under a curved vertebra like some sort of frozen fairy tale. There's even a tiny flare fluttering outside, hand-painted, with a picture of what you assume is a very angry walrus. You knock, prepared for anything. Tilly opens the door wearing snow goggles, a sweater made up entirely of mismatched sleeves, and a smile that could melt glaciers. She says before you can even introduce yourself, "You've brought Nigel's marmalade." You hand over the parcel. She tears it open like a child on Christmas morning, holding up a jar labeled Dan Gresham's frigid fruit spread. Batch hash too, less crunchy. Crunch. You ask if she actually eats it. "Oh no," she says. "I use it as bait. The schoolers love it. Makes them temporarily pleasant." You're invited in, of course, and given a mug of what she claims is tea, but tastes alarmingly of oysters. Tilly, it turns out, is studying bird behavior. Her notebook contains diagrams, observations, and one short poem titled, "The Angry Gull Who Stole My Hat." She shows you her collection of bones, whale bones, penguin bones, something she calls probably, she says it like she's only half joking. Historians still debate whether Tilly was a pioneering ornithologist or just someone who found a hut and made the best of it. What's certain is that her journals, rediscovered in the 1960s, contain some of the earliest recorded observations of penguin courtship behavior, complete with footnotes like, "This one is clearly showing off. You spend the night in her spare bunk, surrounded by shelves of rocks labeled definitely not, just rock. One has googly eyes glued on. You don't ask. By morning, the sky is clear. The sun cuts across the ice in long golden ribbons. Tilly sees you off with a sardine sandwich and a warning. Don't they trust the next camp? They steal spoons. You thank her, tuck the sandwich into your coat, and set off once again into the frozen unknown. Gerald, naturally, is already waiting. Section 4. Your boots creak in protest as you trudge eastward, the snow crunching beneath each step like you're walking on broken sugar cube. The terrain flattens out here, but the wind gets bolder, shoving against your side like an impatient sibling. Gerald waddles behind, periodically vanishing into snowdrifts, only to reappear 5 paces behind you, as if to say, "Don't get cocky, human. Today's destination is a camp known only as Spoon Point." Why? Well, according to Tilly, it's because no one there can keep a spoon longer than a week. Not because of theft, exactly. 4 meteorologists and 1 former opera singer who claimed she came south for the acoustics. Whether that's true or just a convenient explanation for her daily balcony arias, historians still argue. Some say she was fleeing a scandal involving a lobster and a Hungarian baron. You tighten your scarf and adjust Gladys' rein. The sled groans slightly, less from weight and more, you suspect, from existential fatigue. About halfway to Spoon Point, you stop at a supply cache, half-berry crepe Martin Pease, 1913. It has been dug out and rifled through recently. Someone even carved a note into the side. Who took the biscuits, returned them, or face mild social consequences. You chuckle and press time. An hour later, the camp appears. 5 tents lashed together like an anxious starfish. You approach cautiously, remembering Tilly's warning. Gerald wisely hangs back. The first thing you hear is a high-pitched soprano, wailing something that might be Puccini, or possibly just a lament about dry socks. You're greeted by a man with a spectacular mustache and a parka made from at least 3 different blankets. "Mail?" he asks, as if unsure the concept still exists. You hand him a bundle. One letter is addressed to Agnes, the loud one. Another has a drawing of a teapot where the return address should be. You ask no questions. Agnes, the opera singer, emerges moments later, clutching her letter and shrieking with joy. "A sonnet from Lars," she cries. He writes exclusively in iambic pentameter now. You're pulled into their main tent, where the meteorologists are gathered around a heater made from 2 biscuit tins and what appears to be a dismantled harmonica. One of them offers you tea. It tastes like someone boiled sadness and added a dash of licorice. Still, the company is warm. They show you their ongoing weather chart, which includes such categories as angry snow, moody wind, and unexpected warmth. Suspect. You ask about the spoons. Says the mustached man, who introduces himself as Bernard. Yes, that is a problem. He gestures toward a tin marked cutlery, which contains only a single bent fork and a butter knife with teeth filed into it. We suspect the skewers, Bernard says, dead serious, or possibly Agnes. Agnes insists she hasn't stolen a spoon in weeks. Historians still argue whether Spoon Point was a functioning scientific outpost or just a particularly eccentric gathering of snowbound artists. One diary recovered from the site begins. Today, the sky was blue and full of judgment. Another simply says, lost my spoon again. Must invent new form of eating. Before you go, Agnes gives you a tiny sealed envelope for Otto. She says dreamily, he lies near the shipwreck. Tell him I forgive everything, except the soup incident. You don't ask. As you leave, Bernard slips you a small wrapped parcel. Biscuit. Don't tell Agnes. Back in the snow, Gerald rejoins you. You offer him a biscuit, which he declines by turning around and pecking a snowball. The next journey is longer, 15 miles along a frozen riverbed nicknamed the Singing Run. The name isn't poetic. The ice here sometimes whistles, a weird, eerie sound that starts low and climbs until your teeth hurt. Scientists still debate the cause. Thermal expansion, shifting glaciers, ghosts of lost spoons. No one agrees. The landscape here is surreal. Massive icicles dangle from cliff faces like organ pipe. At one point, you swear the ice is harmonizing with your footsteps. You hum experimentally and feel the air vibrate in return. It's beautiful and unsettling, like walking through a cathedral built by frozen time. You stop at dusk to camp near a windbreak made of stacked crates and broken skis. The cold here is sneaky. It seeps in through the seams of your coat, settles in your spine, and casually begins reupholstering your organs. Dinner is Bernard's biscuits, hard as fossils, but oddly comforting. You unwrap Agnes' letter and stare at the name. Otto. You wonder what the soup incident was. Never find out as you lie back against your pack. Gerald curls near your boot. You wonder, briefly, if he's warm. You imagine giving him a tiny blanket. Hat probably hate it. Borga. There's no sound now. Just the steady heartbeat of the ice and your own breath. Out here, mail isn't just communication. It's proof that people still remember, drift into sleep wondering what tomorrow's camp will be like. Hopefully, they have spoons. Section 5. You wake with your eyelashes lightly frozen together, which is neither alarming nor particularly pleasant. Just another day as the unofficial postman of Antarctica. Gerald is already upright and judging, as usual. You brush snow from your collar, sip on what might generously be called tea, mostly melted biscuit crumbs and hope, and break camp. Today's leg will take you across what the old maps call Fable Bay, though there's not a drop of water in sight, just an endless white stretch scattered with half-buried relic and the scattered ribs of a long-dead wooden ship stuck at a crooked angle like a scolding finger poking out of the snow. This is where Otto lives. Your coat weighs unusually heavy today. You wonder if he'll be glad to get it, or if you're delivering a memory I'd rather leave frostbitten. You arrive by midday. Otto's hut is built directly against the ruined hull of the ship. apparently once a Norwegian whaler, now repurposed into a two-room dwelling with patchy tarpaulin roofs and wind chimes made from mismatched buttons. You knock, then immediately regret it. Creaks open to reveal a man with eyebrows like drifting snowbanks and a coat that might have once been an armchair. Mail, he says, his voice slow, precise. You nod, hand over the letter, and wait. He doesn't open it. Instead, he gestures for you to come inside. The hut is surprisingly cozy. Walls lined with old ship maps, bird bones, and a single framed drawing of a steaming bowl of soup with the words, "Never again," scrawled beneath it. Otto brews you something that smells suspiciously of licorice and shoe polish, but tastes faintly of elderflower and burnt sugar. Reads the letter by lantern light. His expression doesn't change much, but at one point he chuckles very softly, like someone dusting off an old memory. She still sings. Then he asks, you tell him she was belting arias at penguins only days ago. He nods, sips his tea, and says nothing for a long while. You learn Otto is, depending on who you ask, either a cartographer or a wandering philosopher, possibly both. His maps are a mix of precision and whimsy, with notes like "Koi might be ghosts here," and "Snow tastes weird in this quadrant." Historians still argue whether Otto was ever officially attached to an expedition, or whether he simply wandered aboard the wrong ship and made the best of it. One theory claims he was meant to be a cook, but refused after the soup incident. Another holds that he was Agnes' lover, shipmate, and sworn spoon rival. You ask him what he does all day. Observe, he says, mostly the wind, sometimes the clouds. Once I tracked a seal for a week to see if it would name me in its will. He gestures to a rolled-up scroll, a wine diary with detailed drawings of gusts and eddies. It's oddly beautiful. One page is just labeled Tuesday, wind that feels like it knows your secrets. He hands you a package for your next destination, addressed to a Marjorie, possibly still angry. The return address is just Otto, ship, regret. You tuck it carefully away. You prepare to leave. Otto gives you a gift, a compass, except the needle doesn't point north. It points, according to him, toward the most interesting direction. You clip it to your coat anyway. The next stretch is tough, long, flat miles of open ice. No landmarks. The wind picks up halfway through, turning the air into a white blur of stinging flurries. You hunch into the storm, muttering encouragement to Gladys, who seems unfazed, and to yourself, which helps marginally. At one point, Gerald vanishes completely. You panic, just a little, but then spot him calmly riding a slab of ice like a smug penguin gondolier. Eventually, you stumble across a line of flag markers, faded pink cloth strip tied to bent poles. You follow them. At the end, a cluster of supply boxes and a small tent packed in so many colors it looks like a melting rainbow. This is Marjorie's place. You knock. Nothing. Knock again. Still nothing. You wait. Then the tent flap bursts open and a woman in a helmet and goggles screams, "I have invented snowshoes for dogs." You blink. "Mail, mail?" she asks, completely calm now. You hand her Otto's parcel. She stares at the handwriting, then rolls her eyes so hard it's audible. She opens it. Inside, a single glove and a very small, slightly burnt pancake. No note. Typical. You're invited in. Her tent is a whirlwind of paper, wires, and snowshoe prototypes. She's part inventor, part biologist, part mystery. Historians still argue whether Marjorie was a scientific genius or a chaos agent blessed with a research grant. One thing certain, her journals contain designs for a weatherproof accordion and a blueprint for penguin-enhanced sled propulsion. No one's sure what that means. Enhancement was his, she says quietly. You ask about the pancake. That was an apology, she says. You say nothing. It seems safer as you prepare to leave. She thrusts a cylindrical tube into your arms. Deliver to Clarence, still not speaking to him. Unless this works, she grins. If it explodes, run. Excellent outside. The wind has eased. The snow glows peach under a setting sun. Gerald waddles back into step beside you. You've still got miles to go, packages to deliver, and questions you're not sure you want answers to. But for now, the compass needle swings gently. Not north, not south, just somewhere fascinating. Section 6, you follow the compass. Not because you believe it, because Otto specifically said it wouldn't point anywhere useful. Which, of course, makes it irresistible. It swings west, or what you think is west, toward a series of ice ridges the maps don't name, and which look from a distance like a parade of sleepy whales. Frozen mid-breath. Clarence's camp is somewhere among them. You've never met Clarence, but you've heard the stories. Tilly once called him the closest thing we have to a fashion critic. Bernard, said he, once wore a scarf made entirely of penguin feathers, just to make a point. And Marjorie refuses to speak to him directly. Though, to be fair, she refuses to speak directly to a lot of people. At one point, her own reflection. The snow deepened. Gerald disappears again, only his occasional hank betraying his general presence. You squint ahead and spot smoke, a lazy ribbon, curling up from a sharp-looking crevasse. Clarence's camp is more curated than the others. 3 snow-block structures, 1 central tent, all color-coded. A flag flaps in the wind, bearing the image of a fork crossed with a quill pen. You knock. Clarence answers in a velvet robe layered over 3 puffer jackets. He looks at you, looks at the package, then sighs like you've brought him a medium-sized disappointment. Oh, it's from her. You tell him Marjorie sends her silence and the package. He opens it cautiously, as if it might contain betrayal. Instead, a roll of blueprints and a note that says simply, still think it wouldn't fly. He snorts. I never said it wouldn't fly. I said it shouldn't. Inside, his tent is a riot of contrasting aesthetic. Plush cushions, icicle chandeliers, and what appears to be a taxidermied rabbit in a tiny flight suit. It's made from boiled snow, and what he insists is saffron adjacent lichen. It tastes like ambition. Clarence is a designer of things, mostly unprovable, often unrepeatable, but always well illustrated. He shows you a recent invention, a collapsible bedroll that doubles as a sled, and, in emergencies, a fashionable cape. Historians still argue whether Clarence was part of a formal research team or merely an avant-garde interloper who joined expeditions to critique their uniforms. One theory suggests he stowed away on a medical supply ship, emerged during dinner, and demanded better napkins. He shows you a sketch of something titled The Ice Blue, a portable sonarelle, he explains, but a tulip also steam. The wind picks up, rattling the tent. Clarence sighs and begins stuffing the blueprints into a waterproof tube. I should reply, he mutters, but she'll just say it was her idea first. You suggest he include a drawing of first Erasmus in a new pair of snowshoes. His expression softens. Tell her I haven't forgotten the accordion tobacco. You receive a parcel bound in pale silk, oddly warm to the touch. For Sister Wren, he says. Her eye repented. Repented for what? He doesn't say. Back outside, you brace against a sudden burst of wind that smells faintly of ozone and regret. Gerald reappears, speckled with snow, and honks once the ridgeline toward the monastery, or what the old charts refer to as Camp Run. It's not on most modern maps. You only know it's real because Clarence insists he once sent them 300 embroidered napkins and received back a single walnut carved with a riddle. The path narrows. Snow overhangs form delicate arches. You walk carefully, your breath visible in the still air. The silence here is reverent. Even Gerald walks quietly, which is saying something. Wind-blown powder. You see it. A line of prayer flags strung between two ice spires. The monastery itself is a cluster of low stone structures partially buried, their roofs nearly level with the snow. You knock on what you hope is a door. After a moment, it opens to reveal a woman in layered wool, face mostly hidden, but eyes bright. She greets you with a nod and the words. You smell of Clarence. Enter. Inside, it's warm, not because of heaters, but from thick walls and an even thicker quilt. Sister Wren accepts the parcel without question, unwraps it, and nods. Inside, a scarf with embroidered constellations and what appears to be a stitched apology in Old Church Slavonic. She brews tea from actual leaves. It tastes of memory and mountains. Sister Wren is a quiet historian. Her walls are lined with journals, weathered books, and intricate embroidery panels telling stories. Some you recognize, some you don't. One shows a penguin dancing atop a phonograph. Another depicts what you think is Otto getting chased by a particularly aggressive sea maid. You ask if she made them. No, she says. Wren were a religious order, a research collective, or simply a particularly organized knitting circle. With a flair for mystery, records are scarce. She gives you a satchel. Inside, letters wrapped in wool, labeled only by symbols, spirals, waves, a single penguin feather. Heron, deliver these in order. She says, you a small pouch of tea. For the next long night, back on the trail, dusk is coming. You follow the fading sun, the compass gently swinging a direction you no longer bother labeling. You've still got places to go, letters to deliver, regrets to witness, and strained tea to drink. And Gerald, loyal as ever, pecks at your boot, reminding you it's nearly time to stop. Section 7. You set up camp in the lee of a frozen ridge, using your now slightly wind-tattered tent as a shield. Gerald immediately goes up against the side like a devoted, waddling sandbag. You brew some of Sister Wren's tea over a tiny spirit stove and watch the steam rise in dreamy swirls, trying not to read omens into it. Tonight's sky is unusually clear, revealing stars so bright they feel close enough to pluck. The constellations look vaguely familiar, but your eyes keep drifting to the unfamiliar ones. Sister Wren embroidered, patterns you now find yourself spotting in real life. Coincidence, probably. But then again, Antarctica has always danced between fact and folklore. You fall asleep wondering what those symbols on her letters mean. At dawn, The compass needle swings again, this time toward the jagged cliffs of Mount Ronan, where rumor has it a man named Elmo lives in an old storage crate with a stuffed walrus named Francis. The trek is steep. You climb a narrow ice step, some of them possibly carved by human hands, others shaped by wind and chance. Halfway up, you see what looks like graffiti etched into the ice, a heart, a pair of initials, and the word oops. Formal structure, just a ready shipping container wedged between two boulders and a stovepipe belching steady smoke. You knock, wait, and hear what can only be described as a slow waltz played on a poorly tuned cello. Elmo answers with a muck-in shell hand and what might be a bathrobe made of stitched together flags. Mail, he asks, squinting, as if you might be an apparition. You offer the letter from Sister Run, the one marked with a spiral. He nods sagely, tucks it into his robe bucket, and waves you inside. Elmo's place is a wonderland of salvaged things. An old naval bell sits beside a globe, missing half the southern hemisphere. On the wall, a chart tracking Francis' mood swing. Francis, incidentally, is propped up near the window, wearing a top hat and monocle. Elmo insists the walrus is retired. He brews something resembling coffee, but with thump, a floral twist that makes your tongue tingle. You take tiny sips and politely avoid asking what's in it. Elmo's reputation precedes him, supposedly once a botanist, now a collector of lost things and stories, preserving forgotten Antarctic songs, sea shanties, expedition ditties, even penguin lullabies. He plays one on the cello, so Alf hums endearing. Gerald hums along. You didn't know he could do that? Historians still argue whether Elmo ever published his collected songs or whether they were all imaginary. His journal entries are cryptic, full of musical notation, interrupted by doodles of spiraling eyes and marching teacup. One scholar believes Elmo might have been part of a secret morale team sent to Antarctica not to study, but to entertain. He tells you that Sister Wren's letter contained a joke, a knock-knock joke, actually. He says, she always did have impeccable timing. You hand over the next parcel, wrapped in cloth and marked with a wave. He squints at it. This one goes to Anna. You'll like her. She makes sculptures out of wind. You don't even ask. Before you go, Elmo gives you a bundle of sheet music. Give this to Bernard, he says. Tell him I still remember the tuba incident outside. You begin your descent. The sky has shifted, clouds rolling in from the north. Snow begins to fall, soft and steady, like someone shaking sugar over the whole world. Your next stop is Anna's camp. Though camp might be generous, she lives in a carved-out ice dome, half buried, half invisible, until you're practically standing on top of it. The only marker is a weather vane stuck in the snow, spinning lazily in a wind that doesn't quite exist. You knock. Nothing. Then a small hatch swings open, and Anna's face appears, frost freckle, with enormous glasses that magnify her eyes until she resembles a startled owl. She asks you hand her the wave letter. She peers at it, nods, and pulls you inside. Her dome smells faintly of pine resin and oranges. The where she got either is a mystery, but swirls and twists of frozen vapor that dance slightly when you exhale near them. Anna explains she uses sound vibrations and air pressure to shape them. You ask how long they last. Until they decide not to. She says One piece resembles a sleeping fox. Another looks like a question mark. One, near the dome's ceiling, seems to mimic your own posture. It unnerves you slightly. Historians still argue whether Anna was a scientist, an artist, or something else entirely. Her notebooks are unreadable to most. Sketches of snowflake beside note lie tri-silent in F sharp, and Ice remembers voices. You show her. She taps it gently, watches the needle wobble. Still working, she says approvingly. She hands you a box filled with what look like frozen soap bubbles. Take these to Nigel. Tell him the stars arrived. Happens if they melt. She shrugs. Then hell. Get dreams instead. You leave as twilight sets in again. Clouds blooming orange and pink over the horizon. The snow is deeper now. Your sled creaks under the weight of deliveries, though Geralt appears to enjoy surfing it downhill. Wings out like tiny sails. You still have miles to go. Letters to deliver, and a new respect for snow that listens to music. Section 8. The path to Nigel's outpost EN mark. Because Nigel doesn't believe in maps. They're just rumors written down. Someone once quoted him as saying, "Which is rich," coming from a man who famously labeled his storage boxes with poetic metaphors instead of contents. His latrine once bore a plaque reading, "The portal to modest oblivion." Still, you have a vague direction from Anna, past the knife-shaped ridge, under the laughing rock, then west until the wind stops, arguing. You tries that way with the sled in tow. Gerald occasionally taking the lead like a penguin-shaped scout, honking helpfully at confusing ice formations, like a giggling walrus. You find it, a half-buried research pod with a stovepipe and a hand-painted sign that reads, "Nigel's slightly inaccurate observatory." Nigel is wrapped in 4 scarves and a jacket that appears to be made of quilt remnants. He wears a monocle over ski goggles and carries a clipboard covered in mathematical doodles and what might be sandwich orders. He asks, sniffing the air, "Smells like Anna's work." You hand him the box of frozen bubbles. He holds one up to the light, marvels as it refracts a full miniature rainbow, then carefully places it in what looks like a nest made of goose down and tinsel. She always knew how to bottle twilight, he says, mostly to himself. His pod is filled with telescopes, real ones, makeshift ones, and at least one made from 2 empty thermos flasks and an old kaleidoscope, with star charts annotated with notes like "too smug" and "possible liar." Nigel is an astronomer by trade, philosopher by nature, and hoarder of oddly shaped icicles by hobby. He believes the Southern Lights are trying to tell a story. They're not very good at punctuation. Historians still argue whether Nigel ever submitted his findings to a journal, or whether he believed journals were sentient and resented him. He once claimed a nebula whispered his name during a full moon, which would be more convincing if nebulas weren't generally silent and unimaginably far away. He brews tea with dried herbs, rescued from a sunken pantry expedition. It tastes like pine, smoke, and possibly ambition. He pours a cup for Geralt, who sips politely. You tell him Elmo sent music. The maestro of melancholy nonsense. Nigel says, did he remember the tuba? You pass along the rolled-up sheet music. He hums to the notes, then pulls out what appears to be an ocarina, shaped like a walrus tusk, Francis' favorite. He says, you stay for a moment as he plays soft, meandering notes that echo strangely against the dome of the sky. The stars blink in response. Coincidence? Probably. Then Nigel retrieves a slim package from a seal tube. This goes to Doctor. Pa, East Ice Shelf. Tell her I forgive the incident with the thermos, but only conditionally. You nod, pocket the parcel, and ready your sled again. Gerald leaps aboard, clearly enjoying the passenger lifestyle. The wind shifts as you head east. A low whistle threading through the ice flattens, stretches. The sky grows wider, or might be. Your eyes just adjust to its endlessness. Dr. Panya's station is sleek by comparison. A series of linked domes with antennae, solar panels, and a wind turbine that spins even when the air seems still. You approach the main door, press the car bell, and wait. Dr. Panya answers, dressed in immaculate snow gear, with a clipboard in one hand and a spoon in the other. Letter, she asks, before you can even speak. You offer Nigel's parcel. She opens it with surgical precision. Inside, a single page inked with the words, "Still think it was about the soup?" She smirks. It was definitely about the soup. Her lab is a wonder of order. Everything labeled, categorized, gleaming. You walk past rows of specimen jars filled with curious samples, algae, ice cores, feathers, buttons. Study the forgotten elements of Antarctic survival. How objects mutate in extreme isolation. People expect to find fossils, she says. But I found a spoon that evolved feelings. She shows you a drawer labeled thermos. Several prototypes, including one that purrs when you shake it. You wisely don't ask. Historians still argue whether Dr. Panya's research was psychological, anthropological, or something more. Footnote-free, and featured long digressions on the emotional resonance of soup temperature. You ask if she remembers the compass Otto gave you. She laughs. Otto's compass doesn't point north, she says. It points to unfinished business. You check it again. It wobbles a little, then settles. Southwest this time. Dr. Panya hands you your final bundle. A sealed tin labeled for the archivist. No symbol, just a wax seal shaped like a feather. Just a wax seal shaped like a feather. Feel a little chill, not from the cold, but from the fact that no one has spoken of an archivist before. Not directly. You ask where to find them. She looks toward the horizon. Follow the ice where it thins, where the sky feels older, where even Gerald stops honking. You both glance at Gerald. He looks offended. You set out again, this time with something heavier than just supplies. The weight of an unsaid name. The last leg of a journey, mapped more by feeling than mapped more by feeling than coordinates. The wind is still. Even the sled seems quieter now. Somewhere out there, the archivist waits. Section 9. The landscape changes slowly, then all at once. Snow becomes powdery and dry as bone dust. Ice thins beneath your boots. Not dangerously so, but enough that your footsteps whisper more than crunch. The air takes on that hollow quality, like a breath held by the earth itself. Gerald stops honking. The compass needle doesn't spin anymore. It points in one direction, steadfast, unblinking, toward a horizon that appears flat, but which you now understand holds layers. No one tells you how far the archivist lays. There are no gaps, no markers. You walk as though chasing a memory too old to remember clearly. Eventually, you spot it. A low, unassuming hill, ice smooth and gently sloping, with a narrow staircase carved down into its side. The stairs are not recent. Their edges are worn, rounded by time, snow, and the quiet footfalls of messengers before you. You descend The air here is warmer, barely, but you feel it. And there's a scent too, faintly sweet, like old parchment and something floral. Not a flower exactly, more like the memory of one at the bottom. A thick wooden door, no handle, just a small brass plaque etched with a single word, welcome. Knock once, it opens instantly. The archivist is neither old nor young, neither man nor woman, or perhaps both. Their face is lined with wind and laughter, but their eyes are the kind you only get from reading things no one else has read for 200 years. They wear a robe, the color of moonlit slate, and gloves too thin for comfort. Their voice is quiet, dry as kindling paper. You've brought the last of the letters, they say, as though they've been expecting you not just for days, but across generations. The room behind them is a tunnel of shelves. Every surface is lined with boxes, scrolls, books, and jars labeled not with dates or names, but with questions. What did the penguin do in the storm of '92? Why did Anna build a sculpture shaped like a mistake? They do not ask your name. They gesture for the sealed tin. You hand it over. The archivist inspects the wax seal, then nods and sets it unopened onto a shelf marked "Do not ready." You blink. You blink. You've come all this way, and the last parcel isn't even open. Not everything is meant to be read yet, they say. Some things need time to settle. You are given tea, of course, always tea. This one tastes like thunderclouds and faint hope. Gerald gets his own cup. He drinks it solemnly, as if sensing the gravitas of the place. You're invited to sit by the hearth. There is one, a small fire crackling inside what appears to be an upturned diving helmet. The archivist unrolls a map across the table. No map of the continent. It's a map of stories. Every delivery you've made, every strange individual, every scribbled letter, joke, sculpture, or bubble. There are points on this chart, connected not by roads or coordinates, but by theme, feeling, by what they meant rather than where they were. This is the true network. The archivist says, you've restored it. You frown, but I just delivered the mail. They smile. Exactly. Historians still argue whether the Thorians archivist was a literal person, a metaphor, or a role passed down through generations. Some say they held no rank. Others claim they advised 3 different governments and once stopped a diplomatic incident using only a haiku. Ever live only in stories, they say. Before you can reply, they open a drawer and retrieve a single envelope addressed to you. The handwriting is unmistakably your own. I found this here, the archivist says. Different version of you, or perhaps a future one. Time is flexible. You carry stories instead of clocks. Your fingers tremble as you open it inside. A single slip of paper going. No signature, no date. The archivist offers you a bedroll and a bunk carved into the wall. The sheets smell like lavender and snow. Gerald settles into a nest of scarves nearby, already snoring lightly, his feet twitching with him wetly. Dream. You stare at the ceiling of the archive, where constellations have been painted with glowing ink. Familiar shapes and strange ones. A spoon, a walrus, a spiral, a compass needle dancing. Your eyes begin to drift. Warmth, the weight of travel. It all folds around you like a blanket stitched from silence and moonlight. You've made it to the end, or maybe just to the beginning of something else. Section 10. You awaken to silence, perfect and whole, like a bowl uncracked. For a moment, you don't remember where you are. Then you feel the soft weight of the blanket, see the flickering light of the diving helmet hearth, and hear Gerald quietly humming in his sleep. It returns, the journey, the letters, the archivist. You stretch, your limbs feel longer somehow, or perhaps just play. Later, the archivist is already up, of course. They've been up longer than time. One. Imagine they're cataloging yard label size captured near a glacier, holding it up to the light to examine the condensation pattern on the inside. Did you dream? They ask, as if it's a matter of logistics. You nod. About the compass, most people do, they say, carefully adding the jar to a shelf marked. Things that feel like goodbyes. You sip from the tea they've left you to dies. Blend tastes like old promises and fresh snow melt. And gear up, the archivist says nothing more as you pack your sled. But they hand you a small box before you go. No address, you note. Gay reply. You don't. It's for the next person who finds you. Question it. You leave the archive quietly, stepping back into the dawnless Antarctic day. The light here is always strange. Never fully day, never quite night. Just a gentle, permanent gray that flatters no one but makes everything feel important. As you climb out of the hollow where the archivist lies, the wind picks up again, not harsh, but purposeful. It tugs at your coat like a friend trying to point something out. Your compass needle has spun again. It points nowhere in particular. Now, maybe that means the mission is done. Or maybe it means you've graduated from needing direction. You trudge across the blank ice, and soon you recognize a distant landmark. Anna's hut, the one with the tea bubble lab and the metal rhubarb. You smile. Anna emerges, sees you, and waves a mitten with more enthusiasm than strictly safe. You survived the trip to Nigel's, and Panya did dissect you. You shrug. Barely. She laughs and ushers you inside. You warm up near the now fully operational kettle. Gel's doing, apparently. He's become something of a local technician and shares stories over biscuits that have been toasted just enough to be considered edible. You recount your visit to Nigel, to Panya, to the archivist. Hannah listens. She asks no questions. When you finish, she hands you a notebook. It's yours, full. Pages covered in neat, looping handwriting. You don't entirely remember writing. Diagrams of snowflakes, half poem, small pressed feathers. Even one of Elmo's sheet music rolls tucked inside. You ask. She tilts her head. Maybe you did. Maybe the journey did. Historians still argue whether the Antarctic Postman ever existed. Some say it was a rotating roll. Others, letters long after any official system had been disbanded. There are even rumors the postman didn't walk on foot but glided by sled made of whalebone and laughter, pulled by a sentient fog. But you know better. Do. Before you leave Anna's hut again, she tells you the last letter arrived for you. No return address. The paper is old, soft at the edges, folded carefully. Inside, rest. Then remember to go again. You don't know what it means. Yeah, you watch the horizon. It feels like it's asking you a question. Do you stay? Or do you deliver the small box the archivist gave you? Even if you don't yet know who it's meant for, you already know the answer. Of course, because some people are born to write stories. Others are born to read them. But you deliver them. Section 11. You set out again, not with the urgency of duty, but with the quiet momentum of someone who no longer needs to ask why. You move like a snowflake falling into place, guided by a pattern too large to see. The small box rides in third sled, wrapped in a wool scarf, and humming faintly, not literally humming, of course. That would be absurd, but it feels like it hums, like it holds a melody meant for someone who hasn't arrived yet. You and Gerald trek in silence for a long while. The wind is friendly now, nudging rather than battering. Gerald wears the extra scarf like a feather diplomat, occasionally pausing to sniff at patches of snow with theatrical seriousness. You stop at a cluster of rocks once used as a navigation point by seal hunters. A rusted kettle sits half buried in the drift. You add a stone to the pile, an old habit for travelers, and whisper a thank you to no one in particular. Yes, stars, because undorsed, the clouds finally break, and above you unfolds the southern sky in all its quiet majesty. The stars are close here. You could pluck one if you had the right gloves. As you lie back, you remember a debate from the archive. Constellations are stories people map onto the sky, or if they are simply reminders that humans are always looking for patterns. Even in cold, empty places, your thoughts drift like your breath in the cold. Gerald snores gently beside you, his little talons twitching again, probably dreaming of sandwiches, or that time he outsassed Nigel. You close your eyes. You don't dream this time, or if you do, the dream is simply silence and soft breathing, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is waiting for a letter they didn't know was coming. And when morning returns, not bright but shy, you keep walking. You nod, wrapped in poem. You nod to each as if greeting old friends. The wind brings you a new smell, wood smoke. You follow it to a small encampment you've never seen before. Just 3 tents and a kettle on a stove made from welded biscuit tins. A person emerges, blinking, wrapped in layers so thick they resemble a woolen cocoon. They look at you, and then at you again. I didn't think it would really arrive, they say. You shrug. It always does. Eventually, they invite you in, offering hot cocoa laced with nutmeg. Their name is Leela, and they've been waiting, though they didn't know what for. They open the box slowly. Inside is a letter addressed to them in handwriting that makes them cry. You don't read it. It's not yours to know. You leave quietly. Historians still argue who wrote that letter. Some believe it was a time traveler. Others suggest it was written by Leela themselves years before and sent into the future by mistake. There are even conspiracies about polar wormholes. None of that matters to you. You delivered it, and now you rest. That night, you and Gerald build a small shelter from snow blocks and old tin sled pieces, lie a land that flickers like fireflies. The stars are closer than ever, and you feel a warmth deep in your chest that doesn't come from tea. It's the warmth of someone who's been everywhere and still knows there's more to see. And yet, your eyes begin to close. This time, the wind doesn't howl, it sighs. The snow doesn't crunch, it hushes. Your sled, for the first time in a long while, feels empty. And that's okay. Because for now, just now, there are no more letters to carry. Only dream, only sleep. So now, as you lie there with the map of stars above you and the soft breathing of Gerald nearby, your mind begins to slow. The stories you've heard, the whispers of artists, of letters, both lost and perfectly timed, they soften, blending into the gentle blur of memory and dream. The air around you is still and cool, like the inside of a snow globe, just after it settles. No more names to remember, no more questions to answer. Quiet knowledge that you were part of something, a network built not of wires or radios, but of footstep, kindness, curiosity, and paper. Your eyelids grow heavier now. The eyelids grow heavier now. The sled is parked in the great silence of the southern ice. You hear nothing but the quiet ticking of sleep, counting down to dream. My bay in your dream. You visit Panya again, or Anna will offer you a cup of her basil mint elixir, or the archivist will whisper something just for you, something too quiet to hear in the waking world. Wherever you go next, let it be soft, let it be slow. You've earned it, so take a deep breath now, and another. Let your thoughts drift like snowflakes. Let your pulse match the rhythm of the Antarctic hush. Sleep well, postman. Your letters can wait.